The topic today is how do you write when your life changes in an instant? How do you actually write that down? And it looks like the people in this room have been through some of these experiences themselves. I'm Patricia Grabow. My presentation partner is Cheryl McLaughlin, who is going to appear on video after I do my part of the presentation. We've both written books about what happens when your life changes in an instant. Mine by death, Cheryl's by a very serious, sudden illness. I'm going to speak the first half hour, and then Cheryl by video for the second. And then there'll be a question and answer period afterwards. So this presentation is how to write about this when your life changes in an instant, and I'm not sure you could have a more life-changing experience than death itself. When you consider the definition of life, that's it. Instantly, no questions asked, no doubt about it, instantly. Everything you counted on as real, everything you experienced, instantly changed, and forever. Assumptions made about the nature of life and reality all changed instantly. For me, there were epiphanies that happened faster, literally, than the speed of light. Before I get to that, though, I'd just like to ask, is there anyone here who has a friend or knows of someone who went through a near-death experience? See, there's almost everyone here has at least encountered that story. There's about 8.5 million of us in the United States alone who've actually gone through a dying experience. And I call them death experiences in the U.S., but there's no dying to that. There is no dying to death. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. To understand the writing task, however, it helps the experience that I'm trying to communicate. So I'm going to tell a little bit about my own experience. So how did I die? I was in an auto accident in London, England, June 16th, 1980. I'd been through a difficult relationship and was in the process of trying to put my life back together again. I bought bicycles and planned a tour of England with my two sons, then 15 and 13, one of whom is in this room. We were returning from Stonehenge and Salisbury Cathedral on a rainy night in Kingston, outside of London, when we were involved in a head-on collision with our little Mini, whom we dubbed Bilbo Baggins, and a Mercedes-Benz. There were exhaust fumes in the car, and I lost consciousness. We were headed towards two gas pumps, and out of the blue, a Mercedes-Benz appeared, and we had a head-on collision. My dying experience started in the car and ended when I came back. My son, Chris, then 15 years old, was sitting in the front seat of the car. He had a broken femur and a broken arm. My son, Tim, was not harmed except emotionally from the entire experience. So how do you describe something like this? It's almost impossible to put that kind of experience into words. I had someone from a writing group later that I joined saying, describing your death is really important because people have always wanted to know what that is. But put it in concrete terms. You cannot put death, I can assure you, in concrete terms. It's like love. It's difficult to capture. It's difficult to articulate in any form. So I tried to use imagery the best I could. And this is the book I wrote called Love to the Millionth Power, A Woman's Journey from Death to Love to the Immortal Now. And I'll just read the paragraph about how I tried to put it into words. Death in London, June 16, 1980. I never thought I would die in London. Here I am, part of unlimited white light of pure, soft love to the millionth power. Like being in love on a summer's day with the sun shining and feeling no separate reality. It's everything and it is I. I have no words for it. And I have to tell you that I still emotionally respond to this. It is everything. Only the indelible image of a child in a state of loving laughter being loosely covered by a white satin blanket, but without the identity of the child. It's like listening to music and being at the point where all that exists is the beauty of the symphony. The only experience in the entire universe is the joy of being enfolded by so much love. It has no periphery, and it has no end. It is the light of love, and I'm bathed in an ocean of kindness without anything else. There is no separate self. There is no ego, no struggle, no breath, nothing but the feelings ached for in an entire lifetime. I am plunged into a soft, warm lake of all-encompassing compassion and joy and welcomed home. I am more alive than I have ever been, only there is no I. And I go on to continue to describe what that dying experience was. Interestingly, I was only able to do that writing later. In retrospect, at the time, I didn't want to describe it. I couldn't describe it. All I wanted to do is to go back to that place where I'd been when I died. All I wanted to do was die and be in this place of love to the millionth power. I wanted to die because there is no death, just love. And that is the place I knew I could be at one with that love. So, what is the nature of reality? I was in a fog, and the context created a huge room in which nothing in my life prior to my death could fit. This moment of death forced with me, without having to think about it, to unconsciously challenge the nature of everything I had perceived of as real. In a moment, I had this epiphany. My life had been and was like a movie. The question is a movie real? I was just lost. I began to get guidance out of the blue, much like the Course in Miracles or Seth material. It came from a place deep inside of me. At the beginning, I just didn't know what that was. I first wondered if I was simply my unconscious self speaking to me. It took me literally years when I finally realized this. Death stripped me of everything that wasn't me. Fear, anger, vanity, pride, guilt, envy. They died when I died. All that was left of me was love. Period. So when I came back, I was suddenly thrust back into a place where I felt gravity, was aware of my contracting and expanding lungs, and again had a sense of ego and self. I could feel anger, fear, and all the rest of the negative emotions. But I also had, in those few moments of my death, gained the ability to access the truest part of myself. I guess you call it your higher self. It is that part of me that is just love. And when I accessed that part of me through meditation, I was accessing my real self. That me that I experienced when I died. Somehow that larger being knew that it would take 30 years to formulate at last the book I am discussing today, the book that became Love to the Millionth Power. 3 books other than Love to the Millionth Power came out of that 30 years of living my life and with guidance and the life that my dying gave me. The books in the life I was to live had to happen to some kind of completion before I could write this book. But I realized I couldn't have written it until this year, 30 years later. I needed time to understand that everything that happened when I came back from dying. It was like I added an additional room to the house, and that was the me that came back after I died. The large room I experienced when I died remained the main room of my house. The room to which I returned was the one in which I had empathy for the human condition within myself and with the rest of the world. But I knew for certain that that was not all there is, that the larger self really is all there is, and the most intransigent set of beliefs the world is holding on to, the belief in sinner saint, the belief in life, death, heaven in a sequence, are our beliefs. The underlying reality of love within the present remained all that really existed for me. It's not that the movie is not real. It is real. But the world is quickly moving into a global connectedness through so many media and more awareness of our interconnectedness that the old paradigms are simply dissolving like a fog. When the fog dissolves, all that happens is that the landscape becomes clearer, and love and color and everything, including our figurative warts, are more obvious. The 3 books I did before I wrote Love to the Millionth Power all said essentially, we are moving from a fear-based paradigm into the love that the others and I have experienced when we died. But we do not have to die to experience it. It bears repeating. We do not have to die to experience love to the millionth power. It is who we are. But I did have to honor that place when I wrote the book. And again, it became difficult to put into words. So the only thing, and there are writers in this room that know this for certain, that sometimes the only thing you can use is an image to talk about something that is beyond that image. So I'll read just a small portion of this. I'm talking about after I was guided to Wilson, Wyoming, and began to start these books. And I was guided to a darling little log home on Wilson Stream. I was pregnant with my youngest child. Our little hog home was on the Wilson Stream, a perfect metaphor for my life and the progress the book had as it ran through that winter. The snow and the ice attempted to cover the water, but the ice was always limited to just the shore and seldom jutted out into the stream more than a foot. Wilson Stream was a full, clear little river, and it was remarkable to me how swiftly it ran in its rush to the ocean. I could walk outside in the backyard in a small layer of snow covering weeds that had been cut to look like grass during the summer. Everything crunched under my boots. I'd watched the Wilson Stream's frenetic journey that seemed so peaceful. The Wilson Stream held such purpose, providing necessary nurturing for the life that lay along its path. It, like me and the others, was mostly unself-conscious with our lives. The stream enveloped the light above it and mixed a color palette that included everything in the water and pierced deep into the green bottom. Aquatic plants swayed softly as the water worked its path to wherever it meant to go, and I watched the streams travel with fascination. It was a flow and a journey. That is what I felt. Those I knew as well as myself we were all a flow and a journey. We were present. We were light. We, though we were conscious, were unconscious being, a presence within a presence. The ocean was simply its goal, and it won with the stream. I could feel this connection to the whole, though I could never quite map out the route it was to take. It existed as substance in motion. It was like me at that point. Water is often the symbol for spirituality, and that was my connection with the love I felt during the accident. And I could never articulate, except with my life and the life of my children, that my own body and passion had produced. I was like that stream and was connected to the spiritual whole. I was, like the water, unaware of how I was nurturing life. But the child I was carrying was experiencing it daily. It was real and it was ancient. And most of all, it was everything I did. I was life, and I, whatever that was present, breathing, in motion, and we were on our course. There are books emerging that tell stories of the paradigm we call death. But, and there's a movie Hereafter talks about it. It kind of displays the experience of the individual. And we will continue this until the mythology and the mystery and about death begin to disappear. Entire movements like quantum physics, heart math, you name it, are beginning to articulate part of what this reality is. We have reached a point of critical mass in the global understanding of ideas where doors are open universally to what some have experienced personally. Mystics have discussed it, and now the experience is becoming common as cell phones in places from here to Africa. There is no getting away from the lessons gained from people like me. Simply put, love in the present is it. 8.5 million near-death experience survivors and their subsequent revelations cannot be ignored because we now have a global means of communication. The common thread among all of us is that we are conscious in some form. I believe that consciousness is not within the brain or the physical awareness, but what the books call the heart, or wherever it is that we feel love. The 3 other books I did over that period of time, Passage from Fear, Passage from Karma, and The Immortal Now, all carry with them concepts that we're not going to be able to go into today. But there's nothing outside of the individual life, that the changes we're going through involve all life, that there is no time, that we are one, and the heart is where the individual resides, that this is a symbolic plane of existence, that we're functioning much more expansively than we can even imagine. And there's a great deal that's worthy of consideration. Also, it's given guidance sessions to talk about the Arab Spring and some of the issues that we're facing right now. For example, the reaction in the Middle East to the movie that's just been created. So, how do you write this down? Well, the answer is it's complex and it's not easy to write down. So I hate to discourage you. But the story then chronicles my journey after the near-death experience and all the lessons learned over this lengthy period of time. I have the academic credentials. They are almost of no use. I have a bachelor's degree from the University of Washington and a master's from the University of Alaska, and I was a teacher in Bush, Alaska when I wasn't working on the North Slope. I was supporting my family. I went ahead, supported my family, and raised my children. Actually, I want to make a couple points for those of you who want to write this down. First of all, it has a life of its own, and you just can't push it. I know that may not be encouraging to a lot of you, and in a world in which everybody wants it now. Some things must be completed before there is the awareness to express it the way you need to express it. And they do not call writing work for nothing. It's work. Nor do they call books that people have written works, because, again, they are an effort, humongous effort on the part of the individual. I realized when I was told that the books I was going to do would help the world prepare for the events 30 years from their beginning and beyond, it was only a couple years ago that I realized that was 2012. So this book was supposed to come out in 2012. I completed about half of Love to the Millionth Power when my dear friend Rosie Porter, a friend of 35 years, came to me in March of this year, and she said she was not going to leave until I finished the book, as I was supposed to do in 2012. She figured it wouldn't take that long. This is a woman who wrote a 48-page newspaper weekly, the Tundra Drums in rural Alaska, and had a small publishing company. Many of NPR's luminaries have come from their relationship with Rosemary Porter. 2 weeks later, exhausted with our 20-minute write technique, the book was actually moving along quickly. For your information, a 20-minute write is just that. I don't know if any of you have tried that technique. The writer writes for 20 minutes straight on the next segment of the book. Rosie was my mentor, so she would read what I'd written and make suggestions to make the passage more clear. Then I would rewrite. Then I prepared for my next 20-minute write. The truth of the situation described was always the mark. True to how it happened, not how I would like it to have happened. It had to be tough, it had to be descriptive, and it had to be true to the nines. It worked for me. She helped me get over kind of an inertia to finish the work. I recommend that as if you're stuck, to try that, but its voice will, it'll create its own voice as you write. As you probably know, writing takes energy, a lot of energy. After Rosie left, I went to Pleasanton, California to work with my friend Cheryl McLaughlin, another gift from the universe. As you all know, editors are, in my humble opinion, the most tough-minded human beings alive, and I give deference to an editor who is in this room right now. Thank you for coming. We finished Love to the Millionth Power. Cheryl, as you know, has been through her own experience about her life changing in an instant and is the best editor I know. Tenacious to a fault, Cheryl let nothing slide by that was not scrutinized. Ultimately, the gift of every writer is to find a good editor, and it is a labor of pure love, hard as nails, but something that leaves you with absolutely no regrets. And that's an important element of it. Gratefully, I had the privilege of working with 6 good editors who scrutinized my work. So the net result is the finished product of Love to the Millionth Power. I was able to, with the help I received, take those difficult abstract concepts and put them into a book. And I was able, with the help of careful, thoughtful editors, to take what might have been unclear statements and make them into something that is clear. Feedback is so very important when you're writing something like this. So this is, we're going to have a question and answer period after we watch Cheryl's portion of this. And be sure to formulate questions you might have about this, because I'm not sure where all of you need to have input on this. The next portion of what we're going to do is we're going to put Cheryl up on that wall over there. We found that we were going to do this talk fairly late, and she just couldn't be here, so she went ahead and made a small video of her presentation.